It all started one cold winter evening when the changes in my marriage began to creep in. Small, almost unnoticeable shifts, but enough to make me question everything I thought I knew. The relationship I once felt so secure in suddenly seemed distant and out of reach. We had been married for years, and like many couples, we had experienced the highs and lows of long-term commitment. The spark that once defined us had dimmed over time, replaced by the comfortable routine of everyday life. We loved each other, of course, but there was an undeniable distance between us now, one that we had both been too afraid to confront. Little did I know, that distance was about to become a chasm that would break everything apart. The changes began gradually. My spouse started spending more time with a neighbor who lived just a few houses down the street. It seemed innocent at first, a friendly gesture, maybe a cup of coffee here and there. At first I didn't think much of it. After all, what harm could there be in a couple of neighbors getting to know each other better? But the time they spent together grew longer, more frequent. It wasn't just casual coffee anymore. They'd spend hours talking, laughing, sharing stories. I could tell that something had shifted, but I tried to ignore it. I didn't want to come across as paranoid or insecure. Yet, every time they got together, I felt like a small knot was tightening in my stomach. I didn't want to be the controlling partner, the one who questioned every little interaction, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Then came the late nights, the sudden phone calls, the text messages that seemed to linger longer than usual. At first, it was small things, things that could easily be explained away. But as time went on, it became harder to ignore. She was more distant, more preoccupied. Even when she was physically with me, her mind seemed elsewhere. She was distracted, always looking at her phone, always lost in some thought I couldn't access. And then came the change in our intimacy. Our connection, once passionate and real, began to feel hollow. The moments we shared grew shorter, more mechanical. At first, I attributed it to stress, to the pressures of life. But over time, it became impossible to deny that something else was at play. She wasn't the same person anymore. It was one evening in late January when everything changed. I came home early from work, expecting to find her at home, maybe preparing dinner or doing something around the house. But instead, I found her phone lying on the kitchen counter, unlocked. Normally, I wouldn't invade her privacy, but in that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I picked up the phone, and as I scrolled through the messages, I saw things I never thought I'd see. Messages between her and the neighbor, messages that crossed a line I hadn't been prepared to see. The messages were flirtatious, intimate, and shocking. Words that should have been reserved for a relationship, not a simple friendship. One message stood out. "I can't wait to see you tonight. I miss the way you make me feel." In that instant, the ground beneath me shifted. My heart raced, and a flood of emotions rushed through me. Betrayal, hurt, confusion. I was frozen, unable to comprehend what I was reading. I had trusted her, had believed in the foundation of our marriage, and now it felt like everything had been torn apart. I confronted her that night. I asked her directly about what I had found. She tried to deny it at first, but the guilt was written all over her face. And then, just when I thought the pain couldn't get any worse, everything changed. She admitted it. She had been seeing him. She had been spending more time with the neighbor, and the relationship had grown into something more than friendship. She apologized, told me how sorry she was, but even in her words, I could sense the detachment. She wasn't truly remorseful. It felt like an excuse. But the biggest shock was yet to come. It was a few days later, after the confession, when I came home unexpectedly early again. I had no idea that my return would be the breaking point, that it would be the moment everything would be exposed in its most painful form. As I opened the door, I heard the muffled sounds of laughter. It wasn't the usual calm of a quiet home. There was an undeniable warmth to the sound, one that felt foreign. I stepped further inside, and there they were, together, in my own home. The neighbor, my wife? In a moment that burned itself into my memory forever, I realized what had been happening behind my back. It wasn't just emotional. It had crossed into something far more physical, far more real. They were together, not just in friendship, but in the most intimate sense. The shock of it was overwhelming. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my mind scrambling to make sense of the scene unfolding before me. My wife, the woman I had built my life with, was with him. And there I was, caught between rage and heartbreak, unable to process what my eyes were seeing. She scrambled to cover up, to explain herself. But there was nothing left to say. The betrayal wasn't just in the words. It was in the undeniable truth before me. From that moment, everything changed. Our home no longer felt like a place of safety. Every room, every corner, reminded me of what had happened. The distance between us, once subtle and unnoticed, had now turned into an abyss. The connection we once shared had been destroyed by the very hands that should have been nurturing it. We tried to talk, to understand what had led to this, but the damage was done. She had crossed a line that I couldn't ignore. The trust that had held us together was shattered, and no matter how much we tried to fix it, there was no going back. The days that followed were filled with anger and sorrow. I watched her continue to speak with him, to see him, all while I was left to grapple with my own feelings of betrayal. I couldn't keep living like that. It was clear that something had changed in her, in us. The emotional distance had become insurmountable, and no amount of words could fix what had been broken. It took time, but eventually, I made the decision to leave. I couldn't stay in a marriage that had become a lie. I couldn't stay with someone who had chosen another, who had allowed our relationship to fade away without a second thought. The journey wasn't easy. There were nights I felt overwhelmed with pain, questioning my decisions, wondering if I could have done something differently. But as time went on, I realized that sometimes you have to choose yourself. You have to let go of the past to find the future. Today, I look back at that chapter in my life with mixed emotions. The pain of the betrayal still lingers, but I've come to understand that it wasn't just her choice, it was mine too. I chose to walk away from something that wasn't healthy for either of us. I chose to heal, to rebuild, and to learn from the experience. Thank you for watching and for listening to this deeply personal story. If you've ever faced a situation where trust was broken, you know how devastating it can be. But remember, no matter what you're going through, you have the strength to heal and rebuild. If you found this story relatable or have been through something similar, please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more content that dives into the complexities of relationships, trust, and personal growth. Stay strong and take care of yourselves. Until next time, if you've been through a similar experience, we'd love to hear your thoughts and how you overcame it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications so you never miss a new video. Remember, you're not alone in your journey.